what's meant to be the deadline live stream. However, if you've probably noticed by the title and probably by a lot of news outlets right now, the Everton versus Liverpool game has been postponed. Official, announced by Everton, announced by Liverpool, announced by everybody you can imagine. We knew this was going to potentially happen with the storm. We had the reports that they were going to have a meeting at 8 a.m. this morning, and they have decided that obviously the safety of travellers, of players, of everything is too much to deem the game to continue. So it has officially been postponed. I hate to ruin your morning for those managers that were probably hoping to watch a lunchtime kickoff, but it's been postponed. So that is the big news right now because, of course, today is the game week 15 deadline. So we need to have a little bit of an update on what are the repercussions, who do we captain, because Mo Salah, of course, was our go-to captaincy, and does this mean that the deadline's actually going to be pushed back in the day? Because previously it was 11 a.m. UK time. Now, with the games now being at 3 p.m, no lunchtime kickoff, there is a suggestion that actually the deadline will be pushed back to 1:30 p.m. UK time, which means we might get some other things happen, like, for example, some early team news from those teams that are playing at 3 p.m. So drop a like on the stream, guys. If you are in the chat, let me know, obviously, what your plans are. But let's just give a general update right now on what is going on. We don't really need to cover off loads of news outlets because end of the day, when we have someone like David Ornstein, of course, part of The Athletic, tweet this, then we know that this stuff is officially happening. So just to confirm what is going on right now, Everton versus Liverpool called off. They had a meeting. They've deemed it unsafe for fans to attend, and basically just uncertainty about the game in general and what it is going to impact. So obviously, based on this, we now know that the game is called off. And yeah, it's a little bit crazy because I think a lot of us were talking about how it's been very, very normal this season so far. We haven't had any monarchs pass away. We haven't had any COVID breakouts or anything. So it's been quite a normal season. But we need to remember that these things are always going to happen in seasons. So a few things. First and foremost, all Liverpool and Everton players will blank. So once the game updates, they will basically just default onto your bench. You need to make sure your squad is quite strong. Secondly, yes, there will be a double game week for Mo Salah now officially. Reason being is Liverpool have a Champions League fixture midweek, so they cannot arrange this game for just later on in the same game week. It officially is now a blank game week for Liverpool, which is great news for those managers that maybe kept their triple captaincy. You will have an opportunity to triple captain Mo Salah later on in the season, which is great. And thirdly, I can't remember what I was going to say. Thirdly, of course, we need to remember that there is going to be possible changes for people's teams now. Captaincy is going to be a big swing. Where do we put the captaincy? And of course, are teams actually strong enough on the bench to justify what is going to happen? Because I know a lot of managers right now have bought Mo Salah coming into this week, bought Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it really isn't ideal. So just take a look at the chat right now. More Trent could be wild. Jordan saying, morning mate, would you sell Vissa for João Pedro? Probably not, because Vissa has a great home game. Sorry, a great form at home, and Brentford themselves are fantastic at home. Benny, I'm doing well. They won't change the deadline. John, it's interesting because actually in the past, we have had scenarios like this where they actually have then changed the deadline for later on. So we haven't had any confirmation on the deadline. However, there is a lot of people in the know who basically will get the news sooner than us. So I will, of course, update you if we do get the news that the deadline is going to be pushed further back. I do think there is a chance, actually, of that happening. So that is all the spot right now. Just see what people are saying in the chat. And when we're first on my bench, should I simply swap him for Salah and captain Saka? Yes. So that is the big thing right now in terms of captaincy. So let's just take a look at my team right now, because, of course, I was one of those managers that was planning on captaining Mo Salah, and that is not the case anymore. So just to give you guys a bit of an update, and let me try and make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it a bit clearer with my team, because we don't need all the stuff on the side or here or up here. So obviously this is how my team is currently looking, and we'll use my team as a reference point right now. So currently I've got the captaincy on Mo Salah. Do not be doing that because the game is now postponed. Vice captaincy on Cole Palmer. Now, previously with the vice captaincy, I felt fine putting on Cole Palmer, but I didn't really overthink it because I knew Mo Salah was the best captaincy this week and I didn't really worry about his minutes. So Now we need to make sure we change the captaincy, because if you don't change the captaincy from Mo Salah, what will happen is your vice captain will become your captain, but then you won't actually have a vice captain. So in the worst case scenario, take my team, the captaincy will go on Cole Palmer, but let's say Cole Palmer gets ill and doesn't play for Chelsea, then I don't have any captain, because obviously I've used the vice and captaincy on those two players. So but while we're on stream, I'm just going to change my vice captain to Saka, and I'm going to put it to Cole Palmer, because as of right now, I feel like I prefer Cole Palmer as captain to Bukayo Saka. I think I rate Fulham a little bit more highly than that of Spurs, so that is the only reason why I'm currently going for that. However, I haven't really given myself huge thoughts about it, so I might just need to spend the next hour maybe just processing whether actually Saka has more avenues to points than Cole Palmer. So I want to quickly go through some of the chat, because I'm conscious that you guys have probably got a lot of questions. So Beeble Checkmate saying, so the game is not going to happen in FPL game week 15. Should we put Salah last on bench? Okay, so yeah, great question. So it's official, a blank game week for Liverpool and Everton. So what will happen is, where you see Mo Salah, that will just end up being like a blank. There'll be nothing there. So you don't have to bench Mo Salah in your team, because the FPL game will automatically default and it will just take it out. So if I left my team like this, once the deadline is passed, because Mo Salah theoretically plays 0 minutes, once all the teams have played, it will take my first bench and substitute Mo Salah out. So you can do it, because the game's officially been postponed. I probably would, like for example on stream now, because I know the game's cancelled, let's just put Mo Salah for Garnacho. I'm obviously not going to play this team, but that's how my team theoretically will look. Now, if people are panicking and think to themselves, there is a chance they might change the Liverpool-Everton game to somewhere midweek, as I've said, it isn't going to happen, because we have a Liverpool Champions League game midweek, so they're not going to ask them to do Champions League on a Tuesday and then play the Premier League game on a Thursday. So it will happen later on in the season, which is great for those that have still kept their triple captain, because double game week Salah is on the cards. So you can put Salah on your bench, you can put Trent on your bench, you can do whatever you want. They aren't going to play, basically. So that's how my team will currently look, even if I don't default it. Time to free hit. Now, I've seen a lot of people suggest this, and Duncan is saying about time to free hit. And I was thinking about this. With the triple captaincy still available for myself, now that we know we've got a double game week for Liverpool, it'll probably just be a singular one. They'll drop the Liverpool-Everton game in a game week where no other team has a double, so it's worth noting that. So a free hit when Liverpool double in that week probably isn't viable, because you probably want to do it when there are big teams. But I do think a free hit is potentially on the card. So if we take a look at the actual fixtures right now, because we need to assess this. Obviously, the Everton-Liverpool game is gone. You'd probably put in Ollie Watkins, and we'll quickly build a free hit team on stream. So we can lean into some Villa players. You're probably bringing in a Villa defender and Ollie Watkins. Brentford versus Newcastle, you could, if you wanted to, put Brian Mbeumo in still, or someone like a Visser. I think this is an opportunity where we could actually put Erling Haaland back in our team, because we're going to have so much money to spend. That is quite an interesting prospect. Then Man United versus Forest, I think you could easily put someone like a Diego Dallo if you wanted to, and then maybe someone like a Bruno Fernandes into your teams. You stick with your triple Arsenal. Probably wouldn't touch the Ipswich-Bournemouth game. Probably put Matoma or João Pedro in. And then Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson. And then maybe lean on someone like a Jarrod Bowen. So I don't actually love the fixtures enough to justify a free hit. I actually think it's just a good opportunity just for a manager like myself with 2 free transfers, knowing that players and managers have already brought in Trent and Salah. Because if we look at the transfers in, you can see in the column here, 260,000 transfers in for Mo Salah. Obviously, that is a real shame for those managers. Also, lots of transfers in for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and 100,000 transfers in for Virgil van Dijk. So if you're in a position right now where you're considering using your free hit, just remember that you might already have an advantage over some managers, because they've used their transfer already on these Liverpool assets. So maybe a free hit is tempting. For me, probably not. I see we've got a super chat here from Boy in the Autumn. Thank you so much, mate. Obviously, you have done this a few times, so I really do appreciate it. So Fabianski, Gabriel, Timber, Lewis, Salah, Saka, Palmer, Bowen, Semenyo, Cunha and Pedro, with Fleck and Wood, Mikalenko on the bench, and 1 free transfer. Okay, so Obviously, right now, your back three, I feel really confident about. I think Lewis will play, having not played in midweek. Salah is going to, by default, come out of your team, and you're going to have Chris Wood come in. Obviously, Mykolenko doesn't now have a fixture. While Chris Wood doesn't have a great game away against Man United, could I foresee him scoring against Man United? I think the answer is yes. I think Man United are still trying to work out the system, and I think they are still giving up opportunities to the opposing team. So I don't think Chris Wood coming into your team is a terrible spot. So you then have a midfield four of Saka, Palmer, Bowen and Semenyo, which I think is great. And then you'd have a front three of Cunha, Pedro and Chris Wood. I think right now, based on that, I wouldn't actually be tempted to go anywhere else. I think Pedro's got a good fixture. Cunha's got an okay fixture. So I probably would just leave it, roll the transfer and give yourself 2 free transfers to be more flexible in the following game week. Otherwise, 1.3 million in the bank. The only other consideration is, could you do Chris Wood to someone like a Nicholas Jackson? That could be a tempting move. But again, away against Spurs, I think it's a great fixture. I don't think it is desperate of you to make a move. So let me know some other thoughts, mate, in the chat. But I think you could actually just roll your transfer in that game week in such a hectic game week right now. I just want to cover off some of the questions that are asking about specifically what is going on. So, will it be a double game week when this game is rescheduled? Yes, correct. When the Liverpool versus Everton game gets rescheduled, it will be later on in the season. So we will officially get a double game week for those Liverpool players. Great news for those that have kept the triple captain. Just making sure. Will Garnacho play? I'll be surprised at that. And a few people saying about the deadline. So let me just double check to see what is going on with the deadline. Okay, so officially the deadline is going to remain the same. So let's just see if they've put the announcement up on here. Nope. Let me just try and find the deadline situation a minute, guys, because that is quite big news. Okay, so for those that are wondering, because I was speaking about the deadline potentially being moved to 1:30 p.m. UK time, that isn't the case. So you can see here, officially from the FPL account, Game Week 15 deadline will remain at 11 a.m. UK time. So obviously not ideal for maybe those managers that had, I'm going to say, Man City assets, because of course with them being the 3 p.m. kickoff, we were hoping there was going to be a chance we might get some early team news from those. That isn't going to be the case. So for those asking, deadline still remains 11 a.m. UK time. One of those. I would have loved it if they pushed it back a little bit, but at least we know the situation now. We're not sitting in uncertainty. We have just under 2 hours until the deadline, which is a bit of a problem because it means we're all going to be panicking a little bit now, deciding what to do with our teams. Let me just bring up my team once again. And actually, let me leave it on the David Ornstein, because I think that is quite important just to have some context in the situation right now. For those that are just jumping on, if you haven't seen already, you will have probably seen, I imagine, the news that the Everton-Liverpool game has been postponed. So now we really need to decide what to do with our teams, because I don't really have any idea what to do with my team personally. So we're going to have to go through that in a minute. And let me just see if there is any other stuff in the chat right now. Deadline remains the same. Do I think Garnacho will play? Probably not. Played against Arsenal. That probably was his start. Should I sell Mbeumo to Gordon with a free transfer? I don't mind it, but I also think Mbeumo's perfectly fine at home. Ollie Watkins, I think, is the best 1 week punt for this week, 100%. I think if you can get there, it's great. The problem with him, of course, is that long term, I don't know if I love Ollie Watkins as a pick. That is the only thing. So if we get Ollie Watkins up here, this game is amazing. But then Forest, City, Newcastle, I don't love the next 4. So just consider that if you are looking to bring in Ollie Watkins. Why does it not say that Salah has a blank game week? It will do once the game updates. I wouldn't even be surprised if they update it in the next hour or so, potentially. I don't know whether they have to actually like almost pause the game to make amendments. So it might just be a case of when the game deadline passes, then we obviously know what's happening. But this is how my team is currently looking, not ideal. So let me just quickly run through some plans that I could do with my own team, because of course my team is in a bit of a spot right now. We don't know whether Gabriel is actually going to play. I believe Arsenal are kicking off tomorrow 2 p.m. so we're not going to get any Arsenal news now between now and then, so we just kind of got to hope for the best that Gabriel does start. I'm not really in a position right now where I want to sell Gabriel because I don't have the certainty that he's out long term. So if this was my team going into game week 15, I think there are problems because I don't think Garnacho definitely plays, which is not ideal. I think it's a good fixture, but I can't sit here right now and say to you that Garnacho is definitely going to feature. And then, of course, if Gabriel then doesn't play, we got Van den Berg coming in for that Newcastle at home game. So not great. What I want to quickly show you of what my plan was originally, because, of course, we need to still remember what was the plan before all this carnage happened. Hopefully the planner will load. It will. Great. So my original plan was to roll the transfer before we knew about the game being postponed. Come into game week 16, sell Mbeumo because I think that's the time to sell him, not necessarily right now. Then the plan was to bring in Semenyo at 5.7 million. Sell Vissa for Alexander Isak because I think game week 16 is where I really want him. I can live with not having him this week. And then that could just be my two moves with 0.6 million in the bank. Mo Salah would come in for Garnacho and my defense would look something like this. I could just leave the defense if I wanted to. Equally, what I could do is get rid of someone in my defense to improve it for that game week in isolation. But let's say the team looks like this. I'll be more than content with it. I could even do Dallo to, if I wanted to, Urin Timber. Take that as an example. And the team would look pretty great. I would be happy with that team going into game week 16. But the problem, as I mentioned, is my team strong enough in game week 15 to just let it roll? And my only concern is that this is quite a weak team. And when I look at some of the fixtures, I think to myself, oh, I'm not fussed about not having Watkins. I've just made my bed. I'm going to sleep in it. But that's not a bad fixture. Brighton's a good fixture. I have João Pedro, to be fair. And of course, City, I'm not investing in Man City. Bowen at home against Wolves is also a good fixture. So need to have a little bit of think about what to do with this team. I see we've got a super chat here from Scott. Much appreciated, Scott. Didn't have to do that. Hi, I have Onana, Timber, Gabriel, Hall. So I think the back three is absolutely fine. Obviously, the Gabriel situation, we need to wait and see. Bowen, Saka, Salah, Palmer, Jackson, Pedro, Cunha, a bench of Fabianski, Semenyo, Nori, and O'Shea. So with that situation right now, Semenyo is going to come in for Salah, and I don't think that's a bad situation at all away against Ipswich. So in your spot, I think your replacement for Mo Salah is actually good enough for you not to panic right now. I think Semenyo is perfectly fine. So that is obviously a good spot to be in. You got one free transfer, zero budget. So if the worst case scenario, Gabriel doesn't play, you've still got exposure of that Arsenal defence, which is great with Urin Timber. And you've got someone like Nori coming in, who I'm not expecting at all to keep a clean sheet, but is still a player that you know is definitely going to play and has the capability of getting an attack in return. So I actually think in your position right now, your squad's good enough and you have good enough players like Bowen, Jackson, Pedro to actually probably roll your transfer. I don't see a desperate move that is needed for your team. Semenyo comes in for Salah, Nori comes in for Gabriel, worst case scenario. So my suggestion is actually going to be roll the transfer and give yourself some flexibility in game week 16. Hopefully that paid off, mate. Let me know, obviously, if you have any additional questions. Don't put another super chat. That's far too generous in itself. Obviously, any further questions, just drop them in the chat, mate. I'll make sure to get to them. Just going to have a quick look to see if there is any further news in terms of the team news and stuff. Basically, for those that are just tuning in right now, Liverpool versus Everton officially postponed. Salah will blank. All these players will have a blank game week, which means that they will automatically get substituted to your bench as long as somebody in your bench has some minutes under their belt. The other thing is that the deadline has not been moved. It is remaining at 11 a.m. UK time. So obviously we were hoping that there was a chance that we could have some changes in the team in terms of the deadline. That isn't the case right now, unfortunately. I'm just checking Twitter to see if there's anything else, but I think we probably have all the information we need to know. Liverpool-Everton postponed, deadline not moving. That's probably it. Now it all comes down to captaincy and if anybody really needs to make moves in their team. I think if you're in a position right now where your team actually is in a spot, and I just want to see if they have updated the game yet. Perfect. They have. Okay, so as you can see, Mo Salah officially has a blank game week. So you can see they've put a dash in there. So you can put him on your bench. You can live with that now. They're not going to move the game to this game week. So don't sweat about it now. So the big thing, obviously, I mentioned is who to put captaincy on, because that feels like quite a big thing. Right now, mine is on Cole Palmer with the vice on Saka. I just think Cole Palmer's game could be quite crazy against Spurs. I don't think they really care about defending that much. And after seeing them against Bournemouth, where they conceded like 3 XG, I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Chelsea in that game. And I see some people have said that it's updated now, which is great. What other defenders to look at moving forward? Already have Gabriel and VVD who are locks. Yeah, so if you have Gabriel and Van Dijk, I think it's going to be quite difficult for you to justify having Trent on top of that. That's a really heavy defence. So I think you could look to maybe go Timber at 5.6 million as a bit of a double Arsenal defence. I do like that. Otherwise, in terms of defenders going forward, let me try and get up the fixture ticker a minute. Give me 2 seconds. How does this look on your screens? Not very good. Let me just get another one up a minute. Let me just try and make this a little bit better, because end of the day, it's all about the fixtures, and we need to make sure that we're not buying from teams that have poor fixtures. So let me just put that up there. So this is the fixture ticker here for the foreseeable future between game weeks 15 and game weeks 20, which is going to take us up into Boxing Day or the New Year, one of those two. So Spurs top of the ticker in terms of just teams, but I don't really love the idea of bringing in a Spurs defender myself. Now, Aston Villa are a consideration. I think someone like a Konsa is a good investment in your teams because I think he's really cheap. The problem, I don't really back that Aston Villa defence at all, and we do have, of course, Champions League football for Aston Villa, so we got a lot to contend with. I don't really love the Aston Villa defence. I don't trust Wolves. I don't think there are many fantastic defences, and I think it always comes back to, can you get yourself a piece of the best defences? Can you get Arsenal? Can you get Liverpool? Then can you sprinkle it with some of these cheaper options? Of the cheaper ones, I still think Newcastle are okay with Hall, and I think Brighton, you still can play them in certain fixtures. Game week 15, you could play them in game week 18 if you want to, maybe even game week 16, for example. So I'll leave this up for a minute so you can check out the fixture ticker, but I don't think there are many amazing options out there. I have Delit, Collins and Wood on the bench. Which two should I put it for Salah and McNeil? I'd bring in Delit and I'd bring in Chris Wood. Collins, I just cannot see a clean sheet for them at all. When will the double game week be? We don't know. There have been some projections already on online by some great people like Planet FPL, for example, but I'm not really going to jump to it right now. I'm just happy to see what is going on. Just seeing right now to see if there is any. No, I can't see any news on anything else right now. Morning, Natch. I hope you're well. Do you think I should start Hall or Colwell today? I do have Mbeumo in my squad, so Hall and him would clash. Yes. In that case, and I don't even love Newcastle away against Brentford. I know Brentford are very much Jekyll and Hyde, but I do think that they are fantastic at home. Their record is kind of there to be seen, and they do score at home. So with that premise, and I don't really think Hall is the most attacking in the world, I would probably just go for Colwell and hope for just a dominant Chelsea performance at least. Scott saying, thank you. I'm captaining Palmer and plan on transferring Bowen for a cheaper asset next week. Yeah, I think if people are looking at one game week punts, because I know some people are maybe thinking to themselves, oh, who can I get to this week? So in terms of the actual teams to target, they are going to include Ollie Watkins. So if we're talking about just absolute 1 week punts who could deliver the goods for you, it is going to be a case of Ollie Watkins at home against Southampton. I would love to see a Brentford player, but I think we've all lost a little bit of hope with Mbeumo right now. And I think that's probably a shame because I think he is quite a good differential this week with people selling him. I think Erling Haaland has to come into his own now with a lot of money floating about for some managers. Erling Haaland, but I wouldn't be breaking up your team just for one game week. I think Bruno Fernandes at home against Forest is great. And I also think Bowen at home against Wolves. I don't really trust West Ham, but I saw enough in that game from Bowen himself to know that he is the man to get in that West Ham team if you want to go there. So I also do like Jarrod Bowen. Now again, just an update on my team because of course it is not the best. And my team is a perfect example of why maybe using a transfer is more beneficial because some people are benching Mo Salah and they have someone like a Semenyo to come in. I don't really have that luxury because I have no guarantees whether Garnacho is going to start and if Gabriel's going to start. And if we get that situation, then my team could look something like this. If Gabriel doesn't play, I've got Vandenberg at home against Newcastle, Garnacho at home against Forest with no certainty that they're going to play. And it doesn't really look that pretty. So let me just refresh my team to show you what it is looking like right now. Not fantastic. If Garnacho was a starter, I probably would roll my transfer, but I'm just a little bit concerned about the rest. In terms of my front three, I am more than happy with them. I just feel like João Pedro, Vissa, Cunha can do another week, and I'm more than happy with it. And those asking about Gabriel, we don't have any guarantees right now, unfortunately. No guarantees about it. And because they kick off tomorrow, I just don't really see it happening. Again, guys, if you're tuning into this right now, please do drop a like and, of course, smash the subscribe button if you haven't already. I think we're like 50 off 19k. If we could hit that in today's stream, that would be absolutely awesome. So if you're watching this, you're not a subscriber, it'd be awesome to have you on board this season. Is a -4 good this game week? If you can avoid it, then I think not making a hit in a game week like this is one of the most powerful things you can do because other managers now are going to be scrambling to rip up their teams and do certain things. And I think actually rolling your transfer is a really, really good position to be in. Already made my 2 franchises this week and brought in Trent as one howler. Ollie, one of those, mate. If you are going to make an early transfer, you always run the risk. But let's be honest, this is such a rare occasion. Like, this doesn't always happen with games being cancelled due to the weather. So it's a shame, mate, but don't beat yourself up. Can I captain Watkins? 100%. I think Watkins is a brilliant captaincy pick for you this week if you owned him. Who is the best alternative for Luis Diaz and Joe Gomez? Are you looking to sell him? If you are, then I think if you can get to Ewan Timber at Arsenal, that's a great investment. And Luis Diaz's price point, I think someone like a Jarrod Bowen, if you can trust it. Otherwise, coming down to someone like a Semenyo, I also think is good. Is Gabriel fit? Don't know on that one. Watkins, Isak, Jackson, Pedro, Haaland, choose 2 to start. Well, it's just for me to pick. I mean, for this game week in isolation, with the fixtures that we have in hand, it has to be Ollie Watkins. And then I think we have to take Haaland's price into consideration. So it probably would end up being Alexander Isak or Jackson. Probably Jackson because of that Spurs defence. Isak captain, I don't mind it, but I'm not all for it either. And those asking about the free hit, I personally am not that fussed about the free hit. I think there are some teams you could lean into and you probably could make some gains, but I don't see enough great fixtures in this week to justify the free hit. I just don't think it's worth it at all. So no, I would not be making a free hit. I do not think it is worth it myself. I haven't even considered it. Just seeing if there's any more news on here. I can't really see much. But of course, remember, guys, that the deadline is actually not changed, which is really interesting. We thought it might move to 1:30. That isn't the case at all. It's actually sticking at 11 a.m. We were hoping they maybe would push it back. Start Hall or Digne. I think if you had Digne, you just got to start him and hope for the best. Roshan saying, Salah, Haaland, Palmer and Mbeumo owner here. So who would you prefer to captain be since no game? Well, I personally have got it on Cole Palmer. I still would stick with Cole Palmer, but I know you being a Haaland owner would be tempting, but Palace haven't been too bad defensively right now, so I probably would still lean towards Palmer. Ollie, thanks, Nacho. Yeah, I got Trent before his price rise. Should we start Liverpool players or just put them on the bench? Well, the fact that they've now blanked out their fixture is the indication that there is officially no game for them in this game week. And as I mentioned, because Liverpool have a Champions League game, let me just double check that. I've literally been saying it the whole time, and I'm like 100% sure, but I have to also check matches. Yeah, so they got Tuesday night game away. So obviously there's no chance, and then playing Fulham on Saturday, so they will not be putting the game this game week. It will be happening later on in the season. So you can bench your Liverpool players, you could keep them in the team regardless. They will get substituted out for whoever's on your bench. Best defenders for this game week. I mean, in isolation, I always have to recommend an Arsenal defender, but outside of the Arsenal defence, I think Villa for this game week look okay, but I just can never really trust it. And honestly, I can't see many clean sheets at all. I think there'll be goals in the Brentford-Newcastle game. I think Palace score. I think Forest could score against Man United. I think Fulham could score against Arsenal. I think Ipswich-Bournemouth, both teams can score. I just don't really think there is many clean sheets at all this week, and I don't really think a defensive transfer is worth it. Right, let's take a look at my team, because I actually need to sort out what I'm going to do with this, because there is definitely not really, I'm quite chill about it, but I'm looking at my team right now thinking, ooh, that is actually what my team looks like, and it's not really a great spot to be in. I'm just seeing if anybody's put a prediction on when it could be. Okay, so they're saying it could potentially be a double game week in game weeks 24, 25 or 33. So loads of time potentially between now and then. So, yeah. With my team right now, I think it's very much a case of what is the worst case scenario? And if the worst case scenario happens, what do I do? So if I leave my team how it is with 3 free transfers, that's how my team is looking, which I would say, who are guaranteed to start? It doesn't really matter about the goalkeepers. Neither are going to keep a clean sheet. I think Aït-Nouri starts. I personally think Dalot starts. I know a few people that have their doubts. I just can't really justify selling Dalot. I think he's absolutely fine for this week personally. And then Gabriel, we're all in the same boat with Gabriel. So in my spot, my biggest risk is Gabriel. If it happens, I got Van den Berg to come in for Newcastle at home. Not ideal at all, but it's still a player. And I think this game week is very much a case of we just got to get by with this game being postponed. Some people are in a worse positions than myself. Some people have Mykolenko, Salah and Trent. And that is obviously not an ideal spot to be in. And I do want to have a quick look to see who is your game week 15 captain. I'll be super interested to know. Just for those asking me, I still think Cole Palmer is the best captain of the players you can see on the screen. However, if I had Ollie Watkins, that would probably be my number 1 pick. So who is your game week 15 captain? I'm just going to put on some names right now. So obviously Palmer. I think Saka is a consideration. I'm going to put Haaland in the mix. And then we're going to put other. And if you could just put who your other one is, that'd be fantastic. Just to see what direction the community are going right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cole Palmer was going to be one of the standouts this week at all. So with my team, moving into midfield, Saka, Palmer, Mbeumo, perfectly fine this week. I have no concerns. I never was planning to sell Mbeumo this week, so the plan doesn't change. And in terms of the front 3, again, I cannot be looking to sell any of those because I think they all start. So for that opinion, I just got to stick with it. Obviously, we could see a situation where João Pedro gets benched and Vissa gets benched, but it just is what it is. I just can't really sell him with that thought. So the big issue is, right now, my team is starting Garnacho, which is not a good spot to be in. So the thing that I need to obviously think about, and you guys need to think about, is even though this carnage is happening and you might want to make a transfer, you need to make sure that the move that you're making doesn't impact your decisions later down the line. So for me, for example, I could easily just say to myself, stuff it, I'm just going to get rid of Garnacho and I'm going to bring in Jarrod Bowen for this game week because it looks great for this game week in isolation. But then does that impact my decisions later down the line? I think the answer is going to be yes. So don't be getting carried away with just this game week in isolation. So it's a real shame Garnacho is one of those players in my team. Not great for it at all. So how could I change this team up? So the first thing I could do is get rid of Garnacho and bring in Semenyo, who was already a planned transfer for me in game week 16. And it wouldn't necessarily steer me away from my natural team. So the squad would look something like this. Semenyo in for away against Ipswich. I don't actually know if that's a great fixture. I don't think I'm as high on Semenyo as others, but I know he gets guaranteed game time, and I know the Bournemouth fixtures are pretty good. Great fixture, meh, good fixture, can bench over here. I think he's a good long-term pick. I do think he's overhyped within the community. I think he's good. I don't think he's great, but at 5.7 million, I think he does the job. So my team would look something like this, and I wouldn't force another transfer because I would just allow Vandenberg to come into the team. So then if we were to stick with a team like this, we come into game week 16 with 2 free transfers. Not the spot I wanted to be in, but I wanted to be in a position where I can then understand if I want to change my team to be a Alexander Isak team or a Trent team. Now, I haven't been as bullish on Trent as other managers. So Mo Salah would obviously come in for Johan Visser. And the team would look something like this for game week 16. Who do I not have? Well, I would be panicking not having a certain Alexander Isak with the upcoming fixtures that they have. So an easy way for me to get there would be to sell Visser to bring in Isak. But I would then need to free up 0.8 million in my team to do so. So he would come in for Mbeumo. And then my team would look like this. Not great in terms of defensive coverage. I don't unfortunately have a defender that I love to downgrade Dalot to, and I don't want to move that position out of my team. So what I could do is finally sell Mbeumo because this was kind of the time to get rid of him. And I would have 6.8 million to spend on a player. The problem is I don't really love players at this price point at all. Now, when we bring up the fixtures from game week 16 onwards, because I really want to make sure if I'm going to bring a midfielder in, I'm bringing in the right one. I do think Brighton are a consideration because even though they're further down the list, Palace, West Ham, Brentford, Villa, I think are good fixtures if I wanted to bring someone like a Matoma in. I also think, looking at this schedule, I also could be considered by a Fulham player because I could bench him in game week 16 and then look to have him longer term. Outside of that, I don't love a lot of them. I think Gordon could be a pick, but unfortunately he is too expensive. And Eze is also a consideration. So I don't know exactly what I would do with my team, but I do think someone like an Eze could be back on the cards if we see good things. And my team would look something like this for game week 16 with the 2 free transfers made. The problem is the defence is an issue. So I'm currently tempted maybe to bring in Semenyo because I'm worried about Garnacho's minutes and just be done with it. But let me know your thoughts in the chat, guys. Let's go back to the team because I still haven't decided what I'm doing. Sorry, my phone's going off. So I'm just making sure there is not anything going on right now here. Just see what is going on. Don't think there is any other big news. For those that just join in, Liverpool-Everton postponed. And, of course, the deadline has not been changed. It remains at 11 a.m., which is not amazing. Which is not a great spot to be in. And I think, of course, the problem with my team as well is does Garnacho play? Because if he doesn't, my team starts to be really weak. It starts to become very, very problematic for me. So, yeah, I am tempted right now to maybe roll, but we will see. Justin Kluivert against Ipswich captain. Love it. Hopefully it pays off for you, my friend. Bruno or De Bruyne. I love the punt on De Bruyne, but we just know the guy is going to probably break down at some point. So I would just be a little bit cautious about his minutes. But I do think De Bruyne is a very interesting differential if you are trying to chase rank, for sure. Just seeing if there's anything cancelled in my local football. Zubi, hope you're well. Who should I replace Flecken with this game week? Not in the bank, thinking Kepa. I'll just keep it. I don't think you need to make a desperate transfer. In a week like this, don't be making a goalkeeper transfer. Semenyo played pretty deep against Spurs. Yes, that is, of course, a bit of a problem. If we are to get up a little bit of numbers for midfielders per 90 minutes. No, we can look at total right now. I mean, in terms of shots, I'm pretty sure Semenyo is a bit of a monster when it comes to shots. Yeah, you can see him at the top there. 55 shots. Now, that looks fantastic, doesn't it? The problem, 12 on target. 12 on target. So it's all well and good having 55 shots, but he literally can only score a maximum of 12 goals from those 55 shots because that's the only ones on target. So you need to make sure that we do look at these details a bit closer. Everyone's talking about Semenyo getting loads of shots off. Great, but he only gets 12. So when we look at someone else like a Madueke, he's only had 42, but 20 of those are on target at least. I mean, who's had way less shots but had more on target? If we come down here, Maddison, he's had half the shots but more on target. Iwobi's had half the shots but more on target. Kluivert's had half the shots but more on target, be it on penalties. So we have to take these things into consideration. And when we look at shots here for Semenyo, 39 on the box, which is great. Like, if you see 55 shots and 12 on target, that usually suggests to me that this guy is taking pot shots from outside the box. Not necessarily the case with Semenyo, but the problem is the positions that he's taking up to shoot are basically just getting blocked. So a lot of them, he's just taking the shot, getting blocked, and it isn't really actually hurting the keeper. So that is something we need to consider if you are looking to bring in Semenyo. Yes, great point. For anyone that's trying to use 2 chips in one game week, you just can't do that. That isn't a viable thing. Is Bowen a captaincy pick? Yes, I think he is definitely a captaincy pick if you want to go there. Is Doku a good differential? I would always be cautious to go Doku. I just always think he is a player waiting to come out of that Pep team at times. Lee, no, I would not be free hitting this week. The reason being is, I just don't think the fixtures are good enough. Like, if I'm free hitting, yeah, you could bring in Watkins, which is great. You could bring in a few players. But I look at this and think, I don't really think there is much to play with in a free hit this week. Agree, Garnacho, I do think will get rotated. The problem with Garnacho, of course, is that play 58 minutes against Arsenal, 85 against Ipswich, but only 24 against Everton. Ahmad didn't play, Rashford didn't play, I think. So because Garnacho was playing in those twin 10s, and we know Bruno Fernandes is always going to play, I think it probably is just Garnacho's turn to be out. So I think, for me, it makes a lot of sense to sell Garnacho this week, because I cannot be going into this game week with potentially 10 players. If Gabriel doesn't play, Vandenberg comes in, then I've got Garnacho sat there, and it's just not really a good position to be in. Could come on for the last 20 minutes, great, but I need to assess whether there is a player this game week that can actually deliver the goods more than maybe Garnacho's 25 minutes, because I do think Garnacho will come on. Like, we haven't seen enough to suggest that the players won't come on for Amorim, because he does rotate those twin 10 positions. If we are to get up let me try and get up something for you. If we get up the Man United results a minute under Amorim, see if this works. Okay, so since Amorim's been in charge against Ipswich, we saw, obviously, this formation. Garnacho started, came off, Rashford was on, come off. Kind of kept the wing backs the same, didn't really make any changes. Then if we come into his next game in charge, which was, I don't know why we're going back to that year, Everton, home match, of course. Rotated Bruno Fernandes, other two remained, wing backs remained the same, took out the midfielders. So we're always going to see at least one of the 10s taken out of the team during the game. And then if we come back to the Arsenal game, which is the most recent one, 2-0 victory, all of the front three come out, Mount, Garnacho and Højlund. And the players that come on were Rashford, Xerxes and Amad Diallo. I think Diallo went to left wing back, I think, but I might be wrong on that one there. So, or it was Anthony. But what I'm trying to say is, Man United, almost impossible to predict what is going to happen with them. But I do think Garnacho will get minutes regardless. Don't think he'll start, but I do think he will come on in the game. So I need to assess whether there is a player good enough this game week that I want to hold long term that is actually going to be a good pick. Now, I love the idea of Morgan Rogers coming in, but I don't actually know if he definitely is going to start or not, which is a bit of a problem. So I need to assess whether Morgan Rogers is a pick. But because I've got Brian Mbeumo in the team and I'm looking to sell him next week, I need to probably make sure that this Garnacho pick is one that is a long-term pick. So, for example, we got 7.5 million to spend. I could go to 7.5 million, but then Mbeumo next week will have to become the budget pick. So I can do it, but my only issue is I don't want to be blocking myself out of other players. So if we were to go up to 7.4, players of realistic consideration for my team at 7.4 million, and let's do it by price here. So I could actually get to Jarrod Bowen. He could be a brilliant pick for me this week. The problem with going Jarrod Bowen is that then Mbeumo has to all the way come down to another player. So Bowen is actually quite a nice differential this week, and I think he does actually make a bit of sense for the other game week. So that's one that I need to consider for sure. Outside of that, Gordon, I'm just not in love with right now. I can't really justify going there. I don't want to touch any of the Arsenal attackers or the other Man United attackers. Eze, I need to see a little bit more from. Mitoma is tempting. I think the fixtures are good enough to justify a selection for him, but I never get excited by Mitoma as a pick. Then we come down to some of the other picks, and I think we're really getting to some sticky picks right now. Don't love any of these at 6.2. Kudos is good, but I'd rather just go for Jarrod Bowen. So then when we come down to all of these players, then we get into the ones of consideration. So Semenyo, as I mentioned, I think is a good pick. I think the fixtures are good, and I think he could deliver. Slightly overvalued in the community, I think. Then we come down to someone like a Smith Rowe. Still a good pick, but always a minutes risk, and I don't really want to jump back on Smith Rowe. Cliver, I think, is getting, again, a little bit overhyped. Minutes just can't be trusted, so I'm not going to be considering Clivert. McNeil has a blank, obviously, so we're not going to be going there. And then we're coming all the way down to a Morgan Rogers, whose minutes have been good, but I'm starting to see 59, 68, 65, Champions League football, favourable game. Could we see rotation? I just can't get on board buying Morgan Rogers this week. I think there could be impending rotation. So by default, if I am going to be replacing Garnacho, it's either going to have to be Semenyo or Jarrod Bowen. And I'm going to write that down because I need to remember that. It's either Bowen or Semenyo. Those are the two routes that we're considering for my team. Don't know exactly where I want to go with that one. Let's just see what people are saying here. Timber or Garnacho for Salah? I mean, I would start Timber for sure, 100%. Apparently the possible double game week fixtures could be Leicester away, Everton away, or Wolves at home. I mean, that is going to be incredible for anybody that's kept their triple captain. I mean, you've got it confirmed. It's going to be in the double game week that Mo Salah plays in, no questions asked. Because even if he just plays in 1.5 of those games, it's going to be good enough. So yeah, people are saying here, Planet FPL, who are fantastic, are saying that they think it could be game week 25, which would be most likely for Everton versus Liverpool if it was postponed. Liverpool have Wolves at home in game week 25, so it'll be Wolves at home, Everton away in a double game week. I mean, that is just going to be triple captain Mo Salah for anybody that still has it left. Okay. So yeah, that is how the team's looking. Let me come through some of the chat, drop them in the chat, guys, and then I'm going to try and finalise my team before dipping off, because I do have to end this a little bit earlier than usual, which is a bit of a shame, but it's always the case sometimes. And as I said, guys, if you are enjoying it, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. We're like 40 shy of 19k. Be sick to hit it on this stream, but I doubt we will. It's a bit of a tough ask, but if you are watching this, you're enjoying it, please do consider going for it. Just to round up some of the general questions that probably will get asked. So Liverpool, Everton is officially postponed. They are officially blanked, so they won't be playing this game week. It will be a double game week later on in the season. Triple captain Salah definitely on the cards. In terms of selling new Liverpool players, just don't do it. You're going to want them straight back in game week 16. You can bench your Liverpool players if you want to. They will be on the bench regardless once the deadline passes, as long as someone on your bench plays minutes. So it doesn't matter what you do with them. The deadline stays at 11 a.m. for those that are asking. That is an important note. We're not going to get a later deadline like 1:30, which we did expect. I'm trying to think what else is important for you guys. Captaincy, mine is going to be on Cole Palmer. I'm pretty confident of that. But I do think Bukayo Saka is a fantastic pick. The best differential captain is going to be Ollie Watkins. But I wouldn't be ripping up your teams to just bring him in for you. Those asking about a free hit, I wouldn't do it myself. I don't think the fixtures are good enough to justify it. However, if you're in a spot where you've got Mikalenko, Trent, Luis Diaz, Mo Salah, you've got terrible bench players who are injured, then a free hit could be a consideration. And I think you really got to then lean in on those differential players alongside those glue players like an Ollie Watkins, Bruno Fernandez's, for example. So hopefully that's covered the main gist of it. Drop in the chat any further questions. So Nacho to play, Johnson or Ray and Aït-Nouri. I probably would go for Johnson and just hope for the best. I don't think anyone's expecting much from Aït-Nouri at all. Free hit, just not a consideration for me. I don't think the team's bad enough to justify it. I would start Colwill over Hall, yes. Yes, if you free hit, it will reset your transfers that have already been made. Take out Diblin for Enzo or Amad Diallo. I'm worried about Amad Diallo's guaranteed game time. I don't think Enzo's output is sustainable. So read into that what you will. I think Amad is probably the more logical pick. But I mean, Maresca's come out and said that Enzo's picking up better positions in the box and he's trying to encourage him to do so. So with that being said, Enzo could be a good pick, but just do not be expecting these returns each and every game week. Differential captain Isak, can't argue with it. He's been in unbelievable form since he's fully been fit. Saliba or Virgil in this week? It really depends. I think I prefer the Arsenal defence, so I would say Saliba. Start Colwill or Hall. Cover that one. Start Van Heck or Aït-Nouri, thank you. I would probably go for, just a reminder for everybody, I mean, I just really don't rate Wolves defensively, so I probably would say Van Heck. I think they're better defensively than that of Wolves. Say that, Fulham score 3 against them. Currently rolling the transfer, but I also am deliberating a transfer for my midfielder. The other consideration that I could do for my team is, I can't sell Dallo, I just don't think it's worth selling him. But what I could do with my transfer is get in, well, I can't sell Anderson for Urin Timber, that was a consideration, but I could sell Aït-Nouri, but it doesn't really help my team in general. So I think it's another tough game week for a lot of managers out there. If Dallo gets benched, then of course this is a terrible week for me. I do like the idea of bringing in Bowen, but I just don't think it is logical for my team going forward. And I do think, most likely, Garnacho gets some minutes in this Forest game. I don't think he starts at all, but I think he probably does come off the bench. Rodgers or Kluivert, I probably would just go for probably Kluivert, because I think his minutes are going to be quite similar to that of Rodgers going forward. But Rodgers is probably just playing in I would say trusted team. Bournemouth have been good. I probably would say Kluivert because he's on penalties, and that's the only reason. Porro to Timber, it's a luxury move, because Porro could definitely score in this fixture. Chelsea always give up chances. So It's a luxury move if you have no other problems in your team. Wood to Isak and Bruno to Semenyo to fund for a -4. Wood to Isak and Bruno to Semenyo. I wouldn't be selling Bruno this week at all. No, I'd probably just leave your team how it is. For a -4, you're asking a lot of those players that you're bringing in. Should I free hit? I only have 2 players, bench players covered with 3 Liverpool players, and my matchup has none. Again, I really don't like the free hit because I think it's going to be more beneficial later on in the season. But if you are in a really terrible spot, then get it done. Really lean into those teams like Aston Villa and that you can bring in. Should I play Mbeumo or buy Semenyo on free transfer? Just play Mbeumo. Mbeumo is not a bad pick. I think a lot of people are panicking. He is still on penalties. He still has a good fixture. I would 100% keep him. Just see if there's anything else going on in the world of fantasy to see if there's been any sort of changes. Because you never know. There might be other games affected, but I doubt it. Strand Larson to Wood. What? Strand Larson to Wood? No, I would not be making that move at all. Definitely not. Latest on Gabriel, I just wouldn't really trust what's been said, but equally as tricky, isn't it? I would just going to keep Gabriel and hope for the best. That is kind of my thought process right now. And just pray for the best. Okay, guys, from a selfish perspective, I'm interested to know what you do with this team. Very interested to know. Let's get the planner up a minute. And again, guys, if you haven't subscribed, it'd be awesome to have you on board. We're like 30 short. If we can get there on this stream, it'd be awesome. So, this is my team. Current considerations is Garnacho to Bowen or Semenyo. That is a consideration. Or but then it kind of blocks me out of future moves. Bringing in someone like a Urine Timber. So I could use 2 free transfers this week, for example. I could sell Garnacho to Semenyo. Do that. And then I could sell Anderson to a Urine Timber as a bit of a long-term play. And the team could look something like this, which looks stronger. Definitely looks stronger. And then going into game week 16, once again, the team looks strong. I could bring in the rotation there. That comes in for that. The problem, I wouldn't have an opportunity to bring in Alexander Isak unless it was for a -4. And in order to bring in Alexander Isak, I would have to sell Visser for Isak. And I would need to free up 2.2 million, which basically would be Morgan Rogers. And then we are back to square one with a Rogers and Semenyo rotation, and the team would look something like this. But it would be for a -4. But that is a temptation, and just accepting that over the next 2 weeks, there will be a -4 taken at some point. So I don't really mind that. That is definitely a consideration for my team. I just don't know if I can go into this game with Garnacho. That is the problem. The other alternative, as I mentioned, is keeping the defence how it is, hoping for the best. Selling Garnacho, interestingly, for Jarrod Bowen. But the problem with that, I've got Fabianski, Bowen, Cunha, and Aït-Nouri, and that just doesn't look good, does it, at all? It just doesn't look nice at all. Even though he's a great pick, I just don't love how that looks. And I just don't love the structure of my team going forward. So Iwobi's a nice shout. Yes, I mean, has Iwobi been overperforming? Let's take a look. So Iwobi here. So across the course of the season, 25 shots, 14 on target, 3.11 XG, 3.82 expected assists. It's not bad. 5 goals. He's ticking over really nicely. I wouldn't be off Iwobi. For those considering the two, Iwobi versus Smith Rowe, both played quite similar minutes. Iwobi played about 200 more, which is what, a couple of games, isn't it? So it is worth noting that. But many more shots for Iwobi over that period. And if we put it on per 90 minutes, you can see here, more shots for Iwobi, higher XG for Smith Rowe, higher expected assists for Iwobi, hence why the expected points are basically identical. So Iwobi's like the popular pick, and I think because of his guaranteed minutes, I probably would favour Iwobi right now over someone like a Smith Rowe. So I don't hate the Iwobi pick at all. He's been ticking over really nicely. Mitoma over Semenyo for me, but Bowen, if it's possible, should start to fire with those fixtures. Yeah, I agree. The problem is, with Lopetegui still waiting in the wings, I actually would just rather wait and see what happens with West Ham before bringing someone in. So that's the only thing. Right. Unfortunately, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up here because I do have to do other bits. But this is how the team's looking right now. I will try and update you on my community page if I do make any changes to my team. The most likely move will be Garnacho to probably like a Semenyo, quite a boring pick, but it probably just makes sense for my team longer term. So that's the potential move there. I think that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Thank you for nearly getting us to 19k. We were close, but it might have to be on the next stream that we do that. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully this game week is good for you, and I will see you in probably a video tomorrow where we recap what is going on in this crazy game week. Have a good weekend, guys. Hopefully the storm doesn't ruin it, and I'll take care.